And now a message from our friends at Fetching Food.
The 1970s and 80s had Elbow, Gravy Train, Purina, Meow Mix, and Bell Bottoms. You've changed your clothes, now change how you feed your pet. Like Bell Bottoms, kick the kibble and join us in the 21st century with the healthiest diet for dogs and cats. Feed naturally, feed raw, feed Fetching Foods.
Groomer Next Door podcast.
Dun, 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 dun.
Hello, pups and kittens, and welcome to another fun-filled and exciting episode of the Groomer Next Door podcast. I'm your host, Chris Green, and joining us this week is an amazing lady. Her name is Vicki Larsen, and she's going to tell us all about raw feeding from her perspective. She's been doing it for a little bit of time now. 2 decades usually does constitute as a while. And, for that, I can only say thank you to Troy Allison for actually making this connection. One thing that I really have to say is a real big asset is all the great people who come on the podcast and then tell their friends. And then they come on the podcast and we continue these great stories. Well, let's just go really quickly into our fact of the week. You may not realize that raw pet foods have been, or even meals, as I like how Troy says it, pet meals, have a long history. In fact, raw foods are biologically comparable to the diets dogs and cats would consume before we domesticated them. And that is the whole thing, folks. It's all bringing it back to full circle. It makes sense. This is what they ate in the wild until we made these great little creatures our companions, our best friends. So why are we feeding them garbage in these pretty bags? Does beg the question. Well, by that sound, Vicki is about to enter the podcast studio. So, with that said, welcome Vicki Larsen to the podcast.
Oh, hello. Hold on a sec. Dad, we have a guest on the podcast.
All right, this week on the podcast, thanks to Troy Allison for making this introduction, we are going to talk to literally the godmother of raw feeding. We are joined this week by Vicki Larsen, and I just want to say thank you for being on and tell us so many of these great stories. But let's start off with wherever you want. I'm just going to pass the mic over and say, tell us a bunch of stories.
I can tell stories. I think that it was like I was telling you is back 20 years ago. I've been actually feeding this year 20 years raw. And we were doing some rescues and rehabilitating cats, and we got this one we bailed her out of the pound, and her back was literally chewed up. She was chewing herself up to death. At that time, though, we didn't know it was FHS. It was just what was wrong with her. And I remember keeping her on steroids and these medicated baths and all this stuff, and frustrated. And so I finally made that decision that maybe she would probably be better off being euthanized. And understand, to be euthanized to me was like the last resort. Like I had tried everything. And I remember taking her to the vet, and this vet told me that she wanted me to try this new science diet food, and that she thought that Bee might have had like an allergy of some kind. And so I was game to try, because anything, because the life is worth way more to me than anything else. It's just knowing that she has a good life. And so I remember she said, so they did this allergy test. It came back, she tested for corn. So she tells me to take her off of to put her on this science diet stuff. And so I was over at a friend's house, and my cat was kind of like the joke because she had already cost so much money. And so his dogs, he has he fed his dogs a raw diet. And he started laughing when I told him about the science diet and the fact that she was allergic to corn. And he started laughing. And he told me that corn is in every single food that was made for pets. And so I went home that day feeling like a total idiot, seriously a dumbass, like I should know this stuff. And I went to the store, and I spent probably 5.5 hours in the grocery store reading the labels on every single cat food and dog food that they had in a dry form. And he was right. Mm-hmm. And when I went back to the vet, I called her, and I'm like, wait a minute. Made an appointment to see her next day, and I still remember her words to this day is that science diet was designed for animals, and top scientists, top nutritionists were the ones who designed this diet, and that she needed to be on that diet, and I should not take her off of it because, otherwise, it would be my problem. And I was like, no, I don't think so. This isn't going to work for her. And my friend, the day before with his dogs, he had mentioned, why don't you feed her raw? And so when I went to ask the vet to help me feed her raw, she told me that I was just a rescuer and a rehabilitator, and that I wasn't smart enough or educated enough to make that decision to feed my cat. I didn't know enough. And I remember telling her that that's what I needed her for, because she's a vet and she should know this stuff and she should be able to help me. And that was the first time I was ever told by a vet that if I chose to feed my cat raw and she died, that I will kill my cat, and that she doesn't want to be any part of my animals' lives anymore. And basically discontinued our veterinary association over that. Just a question. I hadn't even started yet. And it was just, why are you feeding her this if it's not good for her? So, can you believe that? She's like, well, telling me I'm uneducated. I have been doing wildlife rescue and rehabilitation for 20 years before that. And I don't know my animals. I don't know, really. And that's what I thought. She was a veterinarian. And this is the big, I'm sorry, I'm going to say this, and people, even vets, can get upset. But this is the biggest lie that we as pet owners are led to believe, and we have been indoctrinated with this since we are very young. It starts when we're kids. The vet knows best. The vet knows best. They've gone to veterinary school. They have the education. They have the knowledge. They hold those secrets to the animals because, and most of us, we see doctors. We see doctors who are specially trained to treat humans. And as humans, we can relate to our own bodies. But when it comes to an animal, we don't know. But what we've also been taught is to not find out, mm-hmm. to not learn, to not question. Don't question your vet. And seriously, Chris, how many times have you gone to a vet and you've asked a question and they turned you aside, or they kind of steer you away from it because they don't want to go that route? They basically have this, well, I'm the vet. I went to veterinary school, so I know better. How many times have you experienced that?
Oh, well, before the podcast, probably more than I'd like to say. Now that I do this, never. But that's because I have a lot of veterinarians that come on the podcast who are holistic, and they put their stamp of approval on it. So anytime a veterinarian would ever tell me that raw, I'll go back one stage. I did have one veterinarian recently actually tell me how there's no proven science that raw actually works, and she hasn't seen it. Yeah, there's plenty of documentation showing raw actually works, and you can find it. There's this little thing called Google. you can pretty much go through all that. And I'm thinking back.
But that's all hype. Everybody's lying.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I do have to give some veterinarians, they, especially from that era that you're talking, and I hate thinking 1998 is 20 years ago. That just kills me. I'm thinking 20 years ago. That's the 80s, right? But yeah,
No,
yeah,
sadly.
right. I know. I'm always having that issue, but I'm thinking back. I mean, 98. I can honestly say I remember a lot of different things, but veterinary school back then, and I've heard it from a lot of veterinarians who went to school back then opposed to now, will say all of our text had that Hill Science. They were all put together by them. I mean, these pet food companies were up veterinarians' back ends from the beginning.
They still are.
I have a new vet that literally just graduated, and I've asked her a lot of questions, and I can tell she's a little reluctant to want to talk to me openly, because she knows that I can call her on her BS if she was to actually say it. But she said that they didn't have the textbooks. Most everything was lecture, and they didn't have pet food companies up inside there all the time. So I'm actually a little bit optimistic that maybe it's a new era when it comes to it. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't still question, hey, what about this? And see, that's the thing. Back then, we didn't have smartphones. We didn't have the ability to pull up something right there in front of them and go, nope, you're wrong. They could tell us that
Yeah,
the
and
was perfect.
call them on their BS.
Yeah. So I can see it. Now, I mean, don't get me wrong. If they don't know what I do outside of all of this, yeah, I'm sure someone's going to give me some BS comment and say, oh, yeah, if you just feed them a grain-free, you'll be fine. No, that's not the case. But the great part is that I can call them on it, where a lot of people, unfortunately, majority of pet parents don't have the knowledge. They don't spend the time going down the pet food aisle. I do the same thing. My 10-year-old, almost 10-year-old, will come down the aisle with me. She did this the other day. We're walking down the aisle. She knows that I love to talk about pet food, especially when there's people there. And out loud, she just says, hey, Dad, have I ever told you the benefits of feeding raw? I fell over. I fell over. I'm like, you're 9, almost 10, and you're spouting this stuff out. I get it. She's trying to get a reaction of me, but she understands it. That's what really kills me. 9, almost 10, and she knows more than I did when I was in my 20s. That's sad.
But then look who her parent is, somebody who advocates for raw.
True.
And, it's just like that vet, and she's sitting there and she's telling me to not feed her any grains, and then she gives me this huge bag of Science Diet, some new formula that's been specially formulated for animals with allergies. And the third ingredient was corn.
Yep.
And I was going, wait a minute, but see, even at that point, most people would go, okay, she must know what she's talking about, and maybe they've done something different to the corn.
Right.
That this corn is not the corn that, we still take that. I don't, but a lot of people that I know do, is that, and it's true, it's just like, if I have like a heart problem, I can't challenge the heart surgeon. I have to trust that he knows what he's talking about. Yeah. And that's the same thing with our pets, is that when it comes to taking them to the veterinarian, and, let's be real here, there's probably 50% of pet parents that don't take their pets at all, and then there's some that take them too much, but the thing is that how many people actually challenge their vet? Very few.
Yeah.
Very few do. And usually who loses in that challenge is the pet.
Mm-hmm.
Because we don't question the vets. We don't ask them why. We don't even get me on vaccinations. But we take everything that they say as gospel.
Yes.
and we don't even question if it's really right for our pet. And I'll tell you, back then, and okay, this is laughable. I bring poor B home, and what I did is I got rid of just any dry food. And so I actually started my raw feeding adventures as an experiment on my dog. And so when I saw that my dog didn't like drop dead in 2 days or something, the hardest decision for my brain to overcome was this conditioning of what we perceive to be an authority figure in specific areas. That was the hardest thing for me to do, because I've already been told twice now that I was going to kill her. That if I fed her raw food, she was going to die, and it would be my fault. Yeah. And I lost the vet over it. And that's a pretty scary thing and a huge step to take when you love animals so much that the last thing, I think I probably, that whole Hippocratic oath was do no harm. And so to me, that was a huge step. And so I thought, okay, so I started feeding her canned food, which, by the way, had corn in it, too. But not quite as much as, I don't know. See, there you are, guessing again. Is this enough? What's too much? How much corn? What corn's going to tip her? But I had no choice at that point. I had to take this step. And so I started feeding her a little bit of the raw meat that I was feeding the dog. And I was mixing it with the canned food because I still had that conditioning that canned food. I wasn't sure about the nutrition requirements of dogs versus cats, but I knew they were different. And one of the biggest ones I found out was the taurine. Mm-hmm. But back then, it was hard. It was so hard. I had nobody to ask. Nobody would tell me. I called UC Davis, I can't tell you how many times, asking them, why do they need phosphate? How much phosphate do they need? How much phosphate? What does it do for their bodies? I was driving those people crazy. In fact, they were calling me this crazy cat lady in Lake County. That's what they called me.
That's terrible.
And I heard them say it. And so, I had to go to the library. I had to, seriously, in roundabout ways, very covertly, ask the new veterinarian, who I didn't dare tell that I was feeding her a raw diet, because I still had other animals. We were still heavily into rescue. When I got B, my husband and I, we had literally 32 kittens and 8 mama cats that we had rescued and were rehabilitating, and so I was trying to take care of them too. And so I still needed a vet. But I think at one point I decided that I wasn't getting any answers. And I actually drove 2.5 hours to UC Davis, and I actually spent the night over there in Davis, and I was in their library, their medical veterinary school library, looking up this stuff individually, one at a time. I had a whole notebook full of notes. But you know what? It was really hard, because a lot of the stuff, for every word that I ran across, like sucrose, okay, what the hell is sucrose? Oh, that's sugar. But then they were putting it in the glucose, fructose, and they're all coming back to sugar.
Yep.
And it's like, what's the difference? What's the difference? So then I had to find out sucrose, what exactly they did to that sugar, where it came from, how it was chemically altered, down to fructose. Fructose is actually from corn, and then it's pressed, and it does all these other chemical things. And then we have cane sugar, and then we have, so it was just hard. It was really hard. And I came home, but while I was at Davis, I stumbled across their wild animal thing, and I found these feeding guidelines for the little African wildcat and a leopard because also at that time, all of the zoos, the animal parks, and everything were doing that huge shift to natural environments, natural whatever. And so I copied one of those diets down. I'll probably go to jail now because 20 years later I'm confessing I kind of plagiarized their diet.
No, I think statute of limitations is passed. I think you're good.
Well, so the thing, though, with the African wildcat is we don't have those same kind of animals. So that animal eats. We don't have, like, little snakes and lizards. We don't have that. And so what I did is I came home, I waited like 3 or 4 days, and in that meantime, I had found a grooming place that could bathe Bee because she had started biting me. And so I forever, ever, ever, ever will love this guy. He was so good with her, and she trusted him. And so he was bathing her every other day, just her back to kind of like get the old skin and the saliva and the scabs and stuff. And so I sat down and I wrote recipes out. Now we're talking, this was probably a 7-month process to do this. But she was getting better. And she was still eating that dog thing, but still the canned food. So I wrote these recipes out, and I actually faxed them over to this nutritionist, in quotes, at Davis. And they told me I was going to kill my cat.
God.
They had said they sent on this fax cover sheet, not on the actual recipes, and I'd only sent over 3. And what I did is I noticed that we stick within, like a prey niche. My domestic feline cat is not going to go out and kill a sheep.
No.
But it will get a chicken. And so what I did is I learned everything I could about domestic cats. Everything that they kill in people's gardens, everything that they will hunt or grab. And so I came up with a set prey niche for Bee. The foods that if she was out there in the wild are the things that I was going to feed her. I confess I was giving her rats because that's what they eat. Oh my gosh. I can't believe, looking back, it must have been laughable. I mean, but you know what? She thrived. She thrived. Even with my mistakes, even with, just hoping, and then 3 years later when she was, they put an FHS diagnosis on her. It was so much easier knowing now that it was more like within her own system and not a food allergy. And so she thrived. She lived until 2012.
Whoa, wow.
15 years with us. 15 years. And once I got her on a fully raw diet, and that was another huge step too, because I was still very much depending on that canned food to give her the nutrients. So you do these battles within yourself, and by mid-1998, maybe the end of 1998, I prepared my first raw diet for her. And no canned food, and none of that stuff. And now I knew about taurine, and I knew the sources, because it's not just enough to know what they need, is you have to know where it comes from and where you find it. Mm-hmm. I feel like I'm this walking encyclopedia in my head, but don't ask me who I went to high school with, okay? Because I couldn't tell you anybody's name. But I can tell you how much taurine a cat needs. So anyway, but I found these sources, and then also about this time was, I don't know if you remember this first wave of avian flu that came from China. This was like 1999.
Vaguely.
And so it was like, poultry farms across the United States, everything was affected from it. Wow. And so I actually started buying chickens from a friend. And so I knew nothing about organic. I didn't know what that was. I didn't know what grass-fed, free range. I didn't know what that meant. And everything has just become this big learning process. And I do know that the day I fed B her first raw diet, I was scared to death. I was feeling like, okay, if I'm going to kill you, then I love you. I was telling her this. I love you, but I really need you to just eat this. I remember I was talking to the cat, telling her, and she just wants the food. She could care less. She could give 2 craps less what I was saying. But for me, it was a huge step because I was casting off the last thing that was the known, and that was that canned cat food. And, oh, my God, within a month, her hair was growing back on her back.
Mm-hmm.
She was off of steroids. I didn't have to give them to her within 2 months. Within 4 months, her fur, her skin, everything was back the way it should be. Her eyes brightened up. Her fur shined and gleamed. She still went for her monthly bath just because of any kind of buildup that might irritate her skin. And so I'd been feeding, like I'd been doing this like whole transition for, it was like a year and a half. It took me from the day my friend told me to feed her raw food and then started laughing at me like I was an idiot when I asked him what raw meant. And he looked at me and he's like, meat, uncooked meat. Like you buy from the store.
I actually laugh, but the reason why I laugh is because I'm asked that question even to this day. What do you mean by raw? I'm not joking. I have this question asked to me weekly. That's so don't feel bad, because 20 years ago I can at least say, well, we didn't have all of the advances we have. But today, when I say I feed my dogs raw, I feed my cat raw, what do you mean?
I know exactly what you mean.
But they're saying, what do you mean? Raw meat? Bone.
Well, I think that people are, that they're like, so you're feeding raw. Oh, who makes that? I do.
The brand. Look at the brand name.
Yeah, like it's the brand out there. But, I'll tell you, I have, and I'm going to send this to you, I have the picture of the first litters of kittens that ate their first raw food.
Oh, wow.
And when I saw what was happening with B, it did not take too many brain cells to rub together for me to figure out, you know what? These kittens that are coming here sick, we lost a few to diseases. Mm-hmm. These kittens that are coming here sick and their mamas, they've been stressed out. They're in the pounds. Bad things have happened to them. And I can honestly say, up until I got these 4 little Bengal mixes, I never had a healthy kitten, ever. We got the ones that were challenged at the beginning. And once I started feeding them raw, and, screw that dry food stuff. That stuff is pure poison. Mm-hmm. I can't say that it is in our emergency supply pack, like if some EMP or something hit, at least I can feed my cats. Yeah. But it's a higher quality, and you can't, because you can't always get raw either, especially if you have no power or something. But that's just an emergency thing. But the thing is I have fed raw for 20 years. In 20 years, up until last summer, I never had a cat with skin conditions. I've never had a cat with other things that are attributed to raw foods, kidney issues, urinary tract issues, unless they actually had a disease. Mm-hmm. Like we have one right now. He was sent home to die with me. They didn't think he'd last 24 hours. And he was so infected with Khaleesi virus that it damaged 20% of his kidneys. So now he does have inflammatory kidney disease. But he's not on any medication. And that's the beauty of it. And that's the beauty of the raw diet. They don't need the medication because there's nothing else. You know what I'm saying?
They break everything
Some cats
down.
do. Yeah, some cats still need medication. But if you think about it, and this is just something that I've been thinking about lately after talking with you guys, because you have to understand, I was a closet raw feeder for years. I did not say anything about it at all because I have had animal control called on me many times. I have had veterinarians kick me out of their office the minute they found out these animals were being fed raw. I have lost friends because they're just cats. Why am I wasting all their attitude? Well, they're just cats. But, we can feed our dogs raw and nobody questions it because they're dogs. But it's just your cat. But I was sitting there and I was thinking about this, is that in 20 years of raw feeding, and I can say this with all honesty, is that I have cats that come to me that need medication, but as soon as they go on a raw diet and we start doing little tweaks and adjustments, they're pretty much off medication because it's the freaking dry food diet and the canned food. It's the pet food companies. That food is poison, and it almost compels these animals to get sick.
Oh, completely.
I mean, it's almost like this perpetuating cycle, even now today. And with my raw diets, about every 3 or 4 years, I would revise them, and I'd send them to UC Davis. And they finally started working with me about 10 years ago. But the first 10 years, my animal nutritionist friend who does, feeds the wild animals, she would kind of help me. But an African cat's needs are not the same as our domestic cats. So it's always this, question mark down the middle of the line. But, these foods compel our animals to become sick, to become fat, to become overweight, to have hyperthyroidism or hypothyroidism. What are the common diseases of cats? Cancer. Cancer is one of the big ones. Cats with cancers, cats with kidney problems, urinary tract issues. There's so many things that we're doing to our cats that just feeding them raw food gives them a better life. Oh my God, I sound like a, what's the word? I don't know.
You sound
I will never, ever.
I sound like you, actually, because that's exactly how I sound all the time. It's exactly that. I always say this podcast, and I say this with complete confidence, this podcast is what the pet food companies don't want people to hear. Because I never sit and just say any kind of facts. I bring in people who have done it, who have experience in it, and the stories that come with it. And it's like, here's proof.
Oh my God, the stories I could tell you.
Well, I mean, I won't say the name of the particular company, but they're in litigation, and they tried to have it dismissed in the term of, I was putting this podcast out there and they were unable to successfully defend the claim against them because the podcast itself was casting so much of a shadow that nobody would believe them. Of course, it was thrown away, but it was just kind of like, really? Seriously? AFCO hates me, PFI hates me, and you know what? It's mutual. I hate them too. So we're all good.
I have been an advocate, in fact, for raw feeding just because of the results.
Yeah.
I don't have cats with bad teeth. I don't have cats with dental issues. I don't have cats with, and that's not to say I've never had a sick cat. Don't get me wrong. It's just that I think that's been in their natural, their own genetics. Like, I have had cats die from cancer, but they've also come to me at 3 or 4 years badly damaged, so who knows?
They're pre-existing.
I just know that Yeah, is that their life with us was always a good one. Mm-hmm. And I've taken cats to 23, 24 years. Mm-hmm. In fact, last winter, we lost our 19-year-old, but she ran the streets for 6 years before she decided she was going to move in with me for some reason. But, it's just, I don't know. I wish that people, and you have no idea how absolutely grateful I am that this is becoming more of a normal.
Right.
I mean, there were times in my life I lived in fear. Every time we moved, and every vet that kicked me out, and vets no other vets. And, I mean, I always thought, and when animal control would show up, and I would just be like, fear, like they're going to take I'm going to go to jail for this. Because I was always told I'm abusing my animals. And just like UC Davis told me, if you must feed them raw, this is okay, but you're going to kill them.
Well, yeah, it's that you're going to infect them with Salmonella, E. coli. And it's like, let's look at the breakdown. Let's look at the anatomy. These unique and absolutely just extravagant animals are able to, and we're able to sustain in the wild. They could hunt, and they can still hunt in the wild, even if they're domesticated. They can hunt in just the actual animal right there, fur and all, and be fine. And their bodies will intake all of it and will store it and replenish their body in so many different ways. And then what it doesn't need, it extracts it. And it's like, I always ask people this one simple question when they talk about their dogs. How is their poop? And people look at me like, why do you want to know what my dog's poop is like? Well, because if there's a big pile of crap right there, then you're obviously
they're not getting many nutrients.
Nope, not at all. And so
they're crapping out everything.
Exactly. It's like, what do you think?
You have those St. Bernards with those 5-pound piles. You've got problems.
Well, no, it's when you have a Shih Tzu that has a 5-pound crap, then you really got problems.
Or your cat.
Yeah. Or it's always great and I see it every day working with dogs and cats, but with dogs every day. When I'm cleaning and washing a dog up, the first place I go is I check under their tail, look at their butt to make sure there's no clean-outs. I know, really, really great idea that this is what your day consists of, is checking for crap. But then we always express anal glands. We're one of the salons that don't charge extra for it. It's just as part of our whole service. And you get these compacted glands.
Yeah.
And right there.
Glands are just...
Yeah. And I mean, these are big marble-sized sacks of poop, to say the least.
Uh-huh.
And it's sitting there, and it's like, this alone can kill your dog. This alone can get your dog cancer. And it's
impacted too.
And it's like, you know how you stop that? I can easily condense this into a simple thing. Diet. There it is.
Well, I agree. And I made mistakes. I actually lost 8 cats to salmonella. I did. Feeding raw. In fact, I quit feeding for like 6 or 7 months. It scared me so much.
It can happen, but there's still a way of looking at all this. I mean, that cat could have gone out and found a possum or something, and had just as much problems. Could have, obtained rabies. These are all possibilities that are likely. It happens.
Possums don't have rabies.
Yeah.
Possums don't carry rabies. Raccoons do.
Well, raccoons. I was just thinking.
Yeah, in the wild they can find some disease. The worst thing for cats now is, especially in urban areas, is people who are poisoning for birds, for gophers, and rodents. That's a horrible death. Watching a cat die from poisoning.
Yeah.
And from eating something that's been poisoned. And all up and down the whole food chain, everything is affected by that freaking decon rat stuff that you have other animals that prey on it, or they find the dead carcass and they eat it, and it's horrible. But yeah, the salmonella was really a hard one for me, and it took me about another 6 months to get my confidence back. And within that 6 months of putting them back on that crap dry food and canned food, I saw instant different results.
Right.
And so it's like, no, I'm on the right track. Yes, my cat may not have gotten enough phosphates one day, but they got them the next day. But I now look back at those, oh my God, those laughable moments when I'm in the grocery store.
Oh, yes.
And I'm buying, oh my God, I'm buying like 50 pounds of chicken.
Yep. Oh, you're having a party.
No, feeding my cat.
Yeah.
You know you shouldn't feed, oh, here we go. This is also in the store, the butcher. You know you shouldn't feed cats raw chicken.
Yeah. Yeah.
I said, yeah, and our bodies aren't really designed to eat fish too, but we do. we aren't supposed to eat some of the crap we eat either that's being mass-produced out there, but we do. But, yeah, I am, and like I think I was telling you guys, is that I am ecstatic. I am ecstatic that there are now sources that I wasn't crazy. And I am just so thrilled to death that other people are doing this, that they can do this, and they're having confidence. And to feed their cats, their dogs, I don't care if it's their guinea pigs, their rabbits, whatever. Every animal can be fed the way it's supposed to be fed. And I was just so happy because, look, I was at a crossroads with Kalani.
Yep.
I couldn't get her diet adjusted. And you know, Troy did it in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Having that resource, having somebody that I can go and ask and not feel like they're going to take my animals, they're going to call me a cat killer, they're going to tell me that I'm a hoarder, they're going to tell me that I don't know what I'm doing, that I'm just a rescuer, and that I don't have higher education. I'm like, I actually do. I'm like 3 units or 13 units away from my graduate degree. I'm not an idiot. There's just some things I don't know. I can't go do heart surgery.
Right. Not many people can. I mean,
You
there's
know?
doctors who can't even do it, really. Let's be honest. There's probably some heart surgeons.
Right, and that's why, and, that goes back to that whole authority thing, is that now I flat out, when we moved over here, and I found that they had a VC Asher, one of those corporate clinics, the ones that are owned by the pet food companies.
Yes.
And I was like, I can't I can't do this. I can't take my animals there. And it's just, I've even had vets say that they would take my animals on condition.
That's just wrong.
What the hell does that mean?
That is wrong.
When we moved over to the coast, there were very few. I didn't have a lot of choices. And I made an appointment for my cat, and I took her in to get a complete blood test done. Every year I do this. It is very expensive to get complete blood panels done for your animals, but it gives you a really good overall idea of how they are doing. And for the most pet parent or dog parent or whatever, $60, $70 isn't a lot. But when you times it times 12, then you're going, holy crap. But so anyway, I actually had a vet over there tell me that based on my cat's blood test results is whether or not that they would agree to see them because I fed raw.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, okay. I said, I'll tell you what. I will bet you right now. You want to play this little game? I told him this. I couldn't believe this came out of my mouth. From the person who was covertly trying to steer conversations into items of information I needed without being obvious, to flat out 7 or 8 years later telling a vet, I'll tell you what, I'll make you a bet. I bet you that my cat's blood tests are going to come back probably healthier than any other cats that you have seen in a long time. And I said, I know the numbers, I know what I'm looking for, and I want you right now, you go choose 5 of your other cats who have recently had a blood test. And those will be the comparison. You set those 5 aside, and I'm going to have to trust you. I said, but if my cat's blood tests are better than those, I said, you're going to pay for them. He agreed to it.
Wow. Bad bet.
And guess what?
You won?
Oh, yeah, hands down. Everything, all their enzymes. And that vet now suggests raw feeding for cats.
Yeah. And that makes sense because the science proved it. And that's what really drives me nuts, is that the science is proving, and I'm going to play devil's advocate, but I really do believe that the old guard, the old version of veterinarians are starting to die off. I do think that the new batch, I even think that some that are from the old are starting to realize that the science is proving that raw is the right way. Kibble is murder. It's just poison in a pretty bag. I do believe that over-vaccination has become an absolute epidemic, that now people are starting to realize it, including veterinarians, and titers are become the new norm. It's just going to be a matter of the cost is going to have to come down a little bit to make it a little bit more sustainable. But I don't think that we live in that time anymore. I think we're finally in that time and era where people are realizing, hey, there's a better way. It just took us, forever to get here.
Well, it did, and, it's really funny is I seriously feel like I stepped, when I met Jay and Adrian of the Two Crazy Cat Ladies, I was having a cat, and we live in a really hot climate, so every 3 or 4 months he's coming down with a urinary tract infection. And it's not that there was anything disease wrong with him, it's just something was going on with him. And so I ordered their P+. I know that's not the name of it, but I call it P+. I think it's urinary plus. And I put him on that. And it's been a year and a half later, and almost a year and a half later, he hasn't had one.
Yeah.
So there must have been an adjustment in there, and he was also neutered very young, too, which is a huge, huge factor in male cats with tract issues and kidney issues. That's how old they were when they were neutered. So anyway, then I joined that this group page, and I remember that Jay was talking about how expensive it was to buy a pre-formulated, pre-made raw food for her cat. And I'm not going to say who it is because that wouldn't be too cool. But anyway, to buy, the food already made. And I remember typing her, I'm like, really? I feed 7 cats at the time. I didn't have this whole new slew of kittens here. I said, I feed 7 cats and a dog for like $88 a month on raw. Why are you spending all that money when you can make your own? And I was taking a big chance there. That was the first time that I had ever, questioned, why are you... But see, they'd already opened that conversation with the raw food they were buying. So I felt a little bit like, why are you guys spending so much? You can do it for like $80 a month.
Yeah.
And that's how all of us. Then all of a sudden, my eyes just started opening up and going, "Whoa, they're talking about it here." And what? And I'm going to tell you, it was really hard. It really was. And there were times I doubted myself. There were times that, if I had a sick cat, I would sit there and wonder if it was the raw food. And it probably took about 8 years for me to figure out, you know what? I know more about these diets than the vet food because they're trained. I mean, Jesus, Hill Science Diet freaking teaches their nutrition classes, sponsors the nutrition classes at UC Davis.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they're going to be pushing that crap.
Well, yeah.
Because that's who's taking them, and that's where they're getting their kickbacks. And every single vet who puts Hill Science Diet in their office is getting a kickback.
Oh,
they have to sell that stuff. And so it's this huge racket. And I've always known that. And then I watched that guy, help. The pet food, is his name?
Yes.
Cole
Harrington. Yeah.
So I watched Cole Harrington's Pet Food documentary because it was suggested to me. And I have to tell you something, and I'm truly not being arrogant here. That man confirmed, and he had the sources to pull from, which I did not. That man confirmed every single thing that I already knew. Mm-hmm. Do you know what a feeling that was? It was like, whoa.
Redemption.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
It wasn't trying to... I already knew the food was crap. I already knew that. It was that this guy, and this is so hard, I can't even come up with the words with it, but here's somebody else who went to that to understand exactly what all this was. Mm-hmm. And I was right. You know what I'm saying? And he had all those sources to help him. He had that knowledge that I had to go find.
Yes.
I had to dig for some of that stuff. But that was such a validation. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. That was like, oh my gosh, and other people and then all of a sudden it dawned on me that, hey, there's a revolution. These people are tired of this crap food that these manufacturers are putting in our pets.
Yep.
It was just funny. It was like I had this aha moment like 20 years later.
I always say that. It's like, when did you get that aha moment? Because there's a lot of people, when coming through this podcast, will be like, I didn't know any better. And I'm like, so when did that aha moment come around? But see how long it can take. It was the redemption that really got there. That's the unfortunate, is that you were right for so long and had so many people tell you you're wrong, and then just to see it all come out, you're just like, oh, wow.
Yeah. Great. I knew my aha moment was when I saw B get better, and I knew I was on the right track. And I still struggled, and I still doubted myself at times, and it wasn't easy. And, if you go into a vet's office and you start asking them, about, on their omega-3s, do you think that if I were to give my cat some spinach with their food, do you think that those omega-3s would be good for them? Or should I look at the other F vitamins? Those are the omegas and the fats. Or should I add this? You ask a vet a question like that, and they're looking at you like you just lost your mind. And then they want to know why you're asking. Well, because I noticed my cat's kind of looking a little peaked, and I thought, our cats don't normally eat fish anyway, and especially saltwater fish and the high mercury and now the radiation, and it's just a lot of salt. So I was just wondering, is, maybe a more natural, because it was about probably 2003 that I really started leaning and learning about natural and organic, because I didn't want to feed them these horrible foods that are being offered to us. And I remember asking him, and the look on his face was just like, just give them fish oil. Well, I don't want to give them human-grade fish oil, because I don't know if that little gel pack that it's in is really healthy because that's synthetic.
Right.
And when they start realizing that now, oh my gosh, just choose a vet someday. Someday if you're totally bored and you never have to go to that vet again, choose a vet.
Well, I'll share a funny story when it comes to Hills. I walked in because we also as well rescue animals, and so we take our cats and dogs to a specific vet, and they had a really pretty shiny display, and it was nice little counter tray, light up, and it was Hills. And the young vet saw it and saw me, and you could just tell she knew I was going to just have my fun with it. So I'm like, so what's that going to be used for? She goes, oh, we just found it, so we just thought we would use it. I go, oh, it's a great looking display as long as you take off all the signs from it, then it'd be great. Yeah, we'll probably
how much yeah, it's like, how much is a kickback from Hills for having a big thing in there? Yeah.
And then the next day I went in there, and of course, what do you think was all displayed in there? I'm like, yeah, that wasn't just found in the back. You just knew I would call you on it. That's the whole thing. But, I don't care if you have DVM at the end of your name or Junior at the end of your name. I'm still going to have the same conversation with you, and I'm going to challenge you on certain things. If you think that this product is actually good, give me the benefits of what it actually can do that's better than what I'm doing right now for my dog. I mean, it's uncanny. No, there's no science whatsoever that could prove that these so-called, and I in air quotations say, these premium dog foods or even cat foods are better than actually feeding raw. I mean,
You want to know what cracks me up? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go on.
Okay, so Science Diet, so you have a cat that has like an intestinal, say it's just like a digestive issue, and or a kidney issue, and they want to give them these huge pellets, dry pellets, for your cat's kidney condition. The Science Diet ID, indigestive, whatever it's for. So I'm sitting there, and I was looking at this because if they want to offer me the sample, I'll take it, because then I can come home and study it, and read the back and, not be so obvious about what I'm doing. And so I'm looking at the size of this pellet, and I'm looking at the size of my cat's mouth. If you opened your cat's mouth all the way and shoved that pellet in there, they cannot open their mouth far enough to chew it. This thing is huge. And so that's why it just cracks me up. It's like, okay, so we already know that they're having kidney issues, and they're having some kind of maybe little digestive issues, and we're going to shove dry food in there, especially something that big, isn't? And I even asked them once, I'm like, isn't that just not helping? Because kidney issues and urinary, they need moisture, and this thing is huge.
Yeah.
I'm not feeding her this. Yeah. Why would you even? And you walk in, if you see a Science Diet display, you already know they're owned. They're owned.
It does drive.
I actually. Yeah, they're owned. They are owned. They are so owned that Science Diets probably help them fund their veterinary clinic somewhere. They owe them.
Yeah, unfortunately. But you know what the hard part is that I'm originally from Los Angeles, so everything about...
Oh my gosh, so am I.
See, our mentality is different. And I'm always trying
to... Yeah, that's a cat.
Definitely a fact, yeah. But we're so different than other parts of the world. And then to come to the Midwest, and I know that there's not all the Midwest is so far back, but there's a great deal that is just light years behind when it comes to just getting on the train and saying, okay, let's go to the future. And I'm just like, folks, dry kibble, not good. But my daddy fed it, my grandfather fed it, it's good. No, my dog lived to 5 years of age. It had a healthy life. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. See, and that goes back to that mindset of what we were taught and what we. Oh, and the fact that, you know, for a lot of, let's just look at a farm. For a lot of farms in rural areas, a cat is a cat. They're supposed to go hunt, and I'm going to give it some dry food. But if they're hungry, they're supposed to hunt. That's their purpose. They're not my pampered pet that I care if it lives for another 15 years because, oh, hey, at 10 years old, when it gets sick or it gets injured, I'm just going to put it to sleep anyway.
Oh, yeah. Oh, the easiest thing is to say that.
And even where I live, it's really hard. But the thing is that the cat is coming to be viewed as just as valuable in its own way as a dog has always been valued. Does that make sense? You know. I've watched. It's the mindset of the cat.
But you know, I honestly, and this is where I have such a struggle. I always felt like it was like that. I'm an 80s baby, and I grew up during all of that before the internet, really, before it became a boom, before the smartphone. And I understand the studying at the library portions, and I understand all of this. But I still remember cats, even in the 90s. Cats were still probably as popular in Southern California as a dog. Maybe more so because most people lived in condos or apartments or had houses with very small patches of grass, so there wasn't a lot of room for a big dog. So I guess I was in that different culture where cats were more of the dog than the dog was the dog because you just didn't have the room for them.
And so they became the substitute for a dog.
I guess, but people treated them just as good.
They treat them. It depended on where they were.
Well, of course, but
there are some areas of LA County where these cats are eaten. So you have to kind of like go, okay, where are you talking about? Now, if you're talking about, and I'm not by any way even throwing socioeconomics in here, but it is almost a commonality. Yes. Too bad. Tell her to hang on. It is a commonality that in lower socioeconomic places, that cats, people can't afford to take care of them, and they just become street cats.
Yes.
Where you have a lot of feral cats, a lot of wild cats roaming around city streets, you're usually going to find that in more lower socioeconomic areas. And I'm not in any way disparaging someone's income. It's just that that's a fact. And veterinary bills and veterinary costs, I kid you not, are expensive. I think they're way more expensive than they should be. And for every vet who sits there and guilts some parent into, oh, your cat needs this test, and the adult can't afford it, they won't let them go ahead and do the test anyway unless you pay for it. And then the test is $480.
Some are more. A lot of them are more.
Well, yeah, and so what happens now is you get the pet parent who loves their cat, but they're not being given a choice to take better care of it. Does that make sense?
Well, it does. It does from our perspective.
Yes. And also when Matt and I had like 72 cats and we needed to feed them all, you're going, holy crap.
Yeah.
And so it's and I'm not saying that lower socio loves their pets any less. That is not true. They just don't have the financial means, like, say, of certain areas of LA where they can do that with their cats.
Oh, I completely
and their dog.
I always say this. Last Saturday of every month, my wife and I, part of our nonprofit that we're part of, we give out free cat or dog food, and it's dry kibble, to low income. It is the hardest thing I do in a month, yet I know that this is probably the only way that those people can actually have a dog or cat. So the only way I can look at it is that companion for them, they couldn't have it without this program. It kills me to know that they're eating this food, but at least I know that they're eating and their pet parents have them in their life. So I get it. It's just, it is a challenge. And it's that ground that you have to kind of go, all right, well, where are we at? You know, am I okay with this? Am I not okay with this? But you just have to kind of, you know.
But, yeah, and my thing is that I never, ever sit there and I judge someone, because in my mind, everyone that's feeding a cat, that's one cat less that's hungry. That's one cat less being abused, one cat less being abandoned or kicked out or dropped off on the side of the road because they can't take care of them. I would rather see them feed alley cats than the cat go hungry at all. You know what I'm saying? It's that I have made it work. I can't say that we can afford this all the time. This last year has been really, really hard. And it's just that people who are more able to, you know, you have the really good dog breeders who do everything. That doesn't mean that the dog breeder who can't do as much is a bad person. It's the economics.
Right.
And, you know, so I have this, I'll tell you what, I donate food all the time. And I go around the homeless, and some of the most loved cats I've ever seen have no home, a shopping cart. But you know what? To that person, that cat is everything.
Yes.
And so I am going to do what I can and the position and place that God has put me in, because that cat, regardless of what it's eating, is happy. And it doesn't care whether it's eating a freaking piece of Chester's chicken or it's happy. It's happy and it's loved, and it knows it's loved. I have 7 people that I bring cat food to every month. I know where they are. They know where to meet me, and their cats are amazing. You know, and so it's just the raw food, though, the truth is that you can feed your cat less.
It's always it's so hard, and you know, it's very rare to actually be able, you know, especially doing this, to have somebody on that understands the fostering, understands the rescuing, and understands all of this to the same degree. I mean, it is a 7-day job. It's exhausting, it's expensive, and you're doing the best you can. And then the hard part is there's people out there that it is just impossible for them to do this. And I get that. I mean, raw feeding is not the all easy, all inexpensive version of feeding. It is a little bit
and it's not for everybody.
Exactly.
And I'm totally accepting of that. And when they ask me, I tell them I feed raw, but I don't say it in a way like, oh, well, I feed mine raw. Right. You know, that shitty little condescending, elite little snotty thing. No, and, you know, I've taught probably 3 or 4 people in our local area how to feed raw because they asked me. I didn't push it on them. But I will most happily go and buy that bag of Purina Balanced or whatever it is at Walmart. And I cheerfully, and I'll tell you, any cat that has a home and is loved, I don't care what you're feeding it, you're giving that cat something that they wouldn't have possibly someplace else.
Yeah, I give it a 50-50 on that, because the cat, or even dog for this matter, doesn't change. Homeless, nice home, small apartment, doesn't matter. As long as the two have each other and they're able to give each other that same affection. Yes, would I want every dog and cat on raw? Of course, in the perfect world. But I've come to that conclusion in life that it's not in everybody's economic bank book to be able to do it. And that's I think part of the real problem in the conversations out there is that you do have that superior kind of attitude of, well, I feed raw and I make it.
Well, good for you.
Right?
Blow me.
Right? It's like, I've had people say that to me. I'm like, yeah, I do too. What's your point? And
oh my gosh,
it's frustrating.
This lady, oh my gosh, I have to tell you about this, and I'm sorry. Okay, so I was up in PetSmart, and I was actually putting my own homemade pet food stickers on the bags of food.
God.
So I wandered over to this other aisle because I saw like one of the employees watching me in the mirror. So I wandered over to where they have their, I guess it's raw food, but it's frozen. I don't know what the hell it is.
Yeah.
And it's in this like little refrigerator case. And so I was looking at it, and this lady says, she goes, okay, so I'm very, very much down home. I'm not materialistic. I could care less. But I do care about my cat. So this lady, she says, I go, what is this stuff? Because I'd never seen it before. Because I'd never gone to look for something like that. I didn't even think it was there.
Right.
That's how insulated I had become with my raw feeding, to the point where I didn't even know that it was even being promoted.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew you could go buy horse meat, for dogs, but I never thought that PetSmart would have a little refrigerator with specially prepared premium raw food. I'm looking at this, and I'm like, what is this? And the lady goes, she says, this is raw food, and this is what I feed my dog.
Oh, God.
And I looked at her and I said, why? And she goes, because it's expensive and he likes it. Expensive. It was. Seriously.
I know.
$7 for like a pound.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at her and I said, well, how do you know it doesn't have chemicals in it? Well, it says natural on the package. I said, that doesn't mean it doesn't have chemicals. They're just telling you that any biodegradable products that they use as in food is natural. Like natural cow, like natural pig, like natural chicken. And what other form are they in besides natural? We don't have a chicken cow.
Yet.
We have a cow. So anyway, she's looking at me now with just utter distaste.
Oh.
Like, I'm just lowering myself to talk to you. So she looks at me, I swear, I kid you not. She says, let me enlighten you.
Oh, God.
Obviously, you have no experience with this. I said, please enlighten me. And I've got in my hand pet food stickers. Okay, lady? Like, have you not seen this documentary?
No.
And I said, please enlighten me. I said, I'm just some dumb minion that just knows nothing, and yes, I must look to you for all the answers. And she got offended. But the whole attitude was, I'm just some stupid shit in the store who doesn't have a clue what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then she proceeds to tell me that this brand of food is one of the best raw foods that are available, and that dogs, she gets it for her dog. And, her dog is doing just so well on this food, and she just swears by it. And I looked at her and I said, well, what's in it? So she gets a little tube, pulls it out of the freezer, and she hands it to me and says, well, here, you can read for yourself.
Oh, God.
Do you know what was in that food?
Crap. I've read it. I actually went into a PetSmart just the other day just to read that. Yeah, I know. It's crap. Expensive crap.
They put carrageenans in their raw food. You know what carrageenans are, right?
No.
Okay. Carrageenans are actually a natural source. They usually come from peat or some kind of a moss. And the thing is that why the pet food companies, and it's in almost every can of canned cat food. I don't really look at dogs because I've never fed a dog. Since I started feeding my dog raw 21 years ago, I've never bought a can of dog food. So a carrageenan is basically, it's a natural binder. It's that crap that holds all that food together in that pretty little form in the can. So that when you take your can and flip it over and shake it and it drops in one whole big bunch, that's carrageenan. But carrageenan, in some forms, it's also toxic to animals because our animals don't eat moss and they don't eat peat. And the processing in carrageenan, what it does is when it high heats it, is it releases those carcinogens. Hello, can you say cancer? And that's what they put in the food, are carrageenans as a binder. But because it comes, this is where they mislead people. Because carrageenan comes definitely from a natural organic source. Everybody knows what a peat bog is, right? It's what they do to it to make it so that it can be put into these canned foods.
I can't tell you how many times my hand has gone to my head just going, oh, God, I can't believe this. Because it's just so unbelievable.
It's carrageenans. You look it up. They use them as the binders. And these carrageenans, because obviously they just can't go cut out a chunk of peat bog and shove it in your cat food. They have to process it. And everything that's processed, yes, it starts in a natural form, but by the time you get it, what have they done to it to give it to you?
Well, yeah.
And so this had carrageenans in it, and I looked at her and I went, I said, you feed this to your dog? She's like, yes, he really likes it. You know, this whole snotty. And I said, how old is your dog? She's like, well, he's 5 now. And I said, what kind of dog is it? And I always say this song, it's a Shih Tzu.
Yeah, Shih Tzu.
Shih Tzu. I just say Shih Tzu because to me that's what those in my mind.
Shih Tzu is what a lot of people say. Shih Tzu. Yeah.
So I said, well, how's his health? Is it a him? It's a girl. I said, well, how's her health? And she said, well, she's fine. Right now she's currently pregnant with her 5th litter.
Oh, God.
And I went, wait a minute. And that's when I just lost it. I'm like, 5 years old and she's having her 5th litter? What age did you start breeding her? Oh, and check it out. This dog has hyperthyroidism. Oh, okay. So why are you feeding your dog cancer-causing chemicals, which may actually have caused that hyperthyroidism besides overbreeding? I said, why don't you make your own raw food? She looks at me, she goes, nobody makes their own raw food. Why should I make it myself when I can buy it? I went, yeah, you're right. Go ahead, kill your dog. Have fun with that. Here's a pet food sticker. I'd like you to watch this documentary. Really? You're feeding your dog carrageenans? And I was just like, okay. But see, that's just it, though. And this is what my quest has led me to, is that I question everything because I had to read why the hell it was in the food to start with. Why do our cats need hydrochloric acid? What's the purpose? Oh, hey, that beef that's in your cat food, do you know that they wash it down with a bleach solution first?
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
And that's just it, is that they're not lying. It's all the misrepresentation. It's the things they're not saying. And so now I feel confident I can probably, in fact, I did take on a science diet rep at the vet. But the whole thing is that, and I'm going to back up here a little bit because there are times, and I will confess this, that I have deferred to the vet suggestion. And yes, I'm so ashamed to admit this, but I have fed my cats Science Diet. And most recently, because what the vets have that I don't, and I have no way to, is when I have an animal that is sick, I don't know, but I do know that okay, like with Coda. Coda she'll be 10 years old in November. Coda I found in a Kmart parking lot in the middle of November in a freezing rain storm, and she was 5 weeks old, almost completely bald. She had mange, she had ringworm, and she had skin conditions and allergies, and we found out she's allergic to fleas. So Coda spent the first 2 years of her life having to get treated for, and she was on steroids because everything else until we got the mange under control, which was treated naturally, and I treated all of this stuff naturally except the steroids to keep her from eating herself. So Coda is also allergic to fleas. So any flea that gets near her, I mean, we're talking, she just gets these big welts. So everybody's treated naturally for fleas. Whether we have fleas or not, it doesn't matter. Everybody gets treated. And I actually use the Crazy Cat Lady stuff, that Flea X. That stuff worked wonders on kittens. And I didn't even know that was available. I thought all the stuff I made my own, I was like some smart person, and now I can go buy it and I don't have to do it. Not the point. So anyways, Coda, though, was doing really fine, and I was actually, I had a friend over, and I was showing them Coda, and I felt this lump in Coda's tummy. And I was like, what in the hell is this? So I took her to the vet, and it came back that Coda had a huge, enormous, cancerous tumor in her stomach. And so I had a vet who assisted my veterinarian who was more knowledgeable in this. And what Coda actually had was a pyloric tumor, which should have not grown. The anchor, the root, should not have gone back up through the pyloric ring and anchored in the stomach. It should have gone into her pancreas. My cat should have died from pancreatic cancer. But it came on so sudden. And so now here they are, they're removing this tumor. They believe that they have successfully removed it. They know that I want to treat her holistically and with raw food. They don't have a problem with that. My vet does not have a problem with it. They know I want to use, that I've been using the Jay and Adrian's supplements. And this is the first vet I've ever been able to be completely honest with, and I'll tell you what, I want to get out of this state so bad, but this vet is holding me here because I love this vet-patient relationship. So the thing is, though, is that Coda had all these internal stitches, and they wound up removing some of her intestine and part of that pyloric ring. So, yes, I conceded to her being on Science Diet. I think it was the ID, because it keeps the stool soft. And I don't have that kind of knowledge while her system was healing. We couldn't have her eating solid food at all for like 2 weeks. But it was with the understanding. And so there are times that I will defer to the vet, because not that I want her on Science Diet, but because Science Diet for ID is formulated specifically, and it has that stuff for digestive. It has the probiotics. It has the something that doesn't quite give them diarrhea, but keeps it really soft, which is what she needed. And so for 3 weeks she was on that. I agreed that I would do that. But now she's transitioned back onto, we're on Tiki canned cat food at the moment, and she has her appointment on April 9th. And if everything is deemed okay, she'll go back onto raw food. So there are times, and I hate to say it, but there are times that I have conceded for a short period of time for an illness or something until I've had time to actually investigate it and see how I can adjust the foods, that I will concede to what the vet is suggesting, but not forever. It's not all the time. So I feel like a traitor, but I'm not. But I do believe that at this point in Coda's coming out of that surgery, which I'm forever grateful that they were able to get it all So far, they think they got it all. They're pretty confident. And that, they've given her another shot at life. And I'm just very, very grateful. But I can concede for a short period of time that at this moment, yes, they do know better than I do. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. You know what drives me insane, though, is that it's not that pet food, even dry kibble for that matter, is all bad. It's just the stuff that's in stores. It's not all bad. In stores is pretty much that's the all bad. You have to spend $80, $90, $100 a bag for what should already be, should be the normal. I mean, it could be Hills, it could be Purina, it could be any of them. They can make a good product. Stop putting so much inferior product or slaughterhouse waste or just garbage.
How about the phenobarbital now? It's only in euthanized animals that they're finding in all that dog food.
Yeah.
And all that pet food. That's horrific.
Yeah, I'm at a loss. I mean, it's like, okay, you're obviously picking up animals from shelters and farms that have been put down. I mean, you take a horse. A horse is to actually put pentobarbital. I think it's the same stuff. But I mean, I know when they actually have to euthanize a horse, it's like these two gigantic IV things to actually work. I mean, it is astounding. And then, I don't know what to do with all this animal. I can't just bury it or burn it. So, hey, meat guy, you want to come and pick this up? Okay.
Enter the hacker who sells it to the renderer, who sells it to the pet food company. Years and years and years ago when I worked, because I volunteered at the Humane Society and I also would be at the pound, I remember seeing those barrels and barrels and barrels and barrels of stacked carcasses, full of carcasses, stuffed with carcasses in their freezer. And I'm like, what do you guys do with these? And they would have a truck come and pick them up. Where are those animals going? And if you think about it, every year in the United States, 5 to 10 million animals are euthanized annually. They're not paying to burn all of those. What are they doing with them? They're selling them back to the pet food company because we certainly don't have that many going into science, And so, and the thing is those animals in the pound, some of those animals are diseased, and I truly believe that some of these bacterial and these fungal viruses that they're in the food.
Yeah.
In slight traces, they're in that food. And so, but I did want to be honest, is that I don't always think that what I know is the best, and I will defer. And the best thing that I really, really liked about these veterinarians is when we were discussing Coda's surgery, they did not tell me she was going to go on ID. This is how he opened the conversation. And Vicki, I know you're not going to like to hear this, but so when my vet opened that conversation to the canned ID, that told me right there that he seriously respects my position with my pet. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, very much so. Completely.
When they preface it, yeah.
Yeah, he definitely knows.
And so I agreed. And so Coda's nutrition, and this is why I am like, you have no idea how thrilled I am that this is now all out in the open, and I almost feel like a kid at Christmas. Because there's just all this stuff, and I have been just going crazy, trying to figure out and learning about all the new things, and I want this cookbook, and whoa, hey, I had to come up with this recipe, and look, it's in a book, and I can buy it, and I don't have to think about it anymore. It's almost like I'm just going, holy crap, oh my gosh.
It's not taboo anymore.
I wish... And I wish this was there 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I really do. Because, I started adding in veggies and stuff because I didn't want to use synthetic vitamins. I didn't want to use... I put all kinds of... Not a lot, just enough,
I do too.
Yes, and you guys can watch something. And, you know, you can watch something. I grow the stuff for them, so I know where it's sourced. I'm almost ready. I'll be sourcing my own chickens from my own flock. So I'm just like really excited. But it's like a kid with Christmas, and I'll sit there and I'll look at my husband and I'll go, "Are you kidding me? Look at this. Look what they have for these cats now. Mm-hmm. How come we just trying to find vitamins for them 20 years ago was a joke? Oh, yeah. Supplements, it wasn't even there." And so I feel like this kid at Christmas, and you know, with Coda and her cancer, I feel, and I'm serious here, and I'm not in any way, Coda's going to require a special diet. And I have been given, and this is where I know that things are shifting. Yes, you can watch something. Yes, I did. And this is where I know it's shifting, is because the veterinarian who assisted Coda, who assisted my vet with Coda, actually is from UC Davis.
Oh, boy.
And she gave me the diet guidelines for Coda's raw diet, what she needed, and how to work her back into this raw diet. And I'm not going to give her name because this isn't supposed to, I shouldn't have even said that. But the thing is that the raw diet is actually being seriously considered. I think we're going to see a big shift in about 5 years.
I think sooner.
Where it's not going to be, well, where you're going to get top schools and top vets behind it.
Well, I mean, the vets that I'm talking to are they're very high level, and I do believe that they're the ones that are changing everything. So
I think so too. Yeah, but she gave me the guidelines to keep my cat off of drugs, holistically being treated on a natural raw diet. Think about that for a minute. This is, to me, it's amazing. The same school, the same university 20 years ago that fought me and called me names and accused me of killing my cats, and that they're all going to die. They're all going to die. Is actually, I mean, I can't believe this, and I feel like, oh my gosh, look, they're working with me, and I've never had that. I mean, I've never had that. I have been tolerated. I have been called eccentric. I have been called a little crazy. I have been referred to as not quite right in the head because I have fed raw diets to my cats. But their blood work doesn't lie.
Right.
Their blood work doesn't lie.
Science doesn't lie. That's really what it always comes down to. Well, you know, the hard part about doing this is we only have so much time, and then that's when it says, "Hey, guess what? You're going to almost reach the end of the episode because it only lets you record so long." Yeah, I know, it's kind of weird. It's like at 95 minutes, that's the cutoff. And I'm literally like a couple minutes away from that. So, before we actually go, is there any lasting things you wanted to mention? Any website to go to? Anything whatsoever?
I think that if I were to mention anything to people, is that right now there's so many trusted resources. Dr. Karen Becker, she has, raw feeding diets, I believe, for dogs and for cats. Fetching Foods, Troy Allison has, a basic do-it-yourself diet. Is that now, with all the resources that are available, all the second guessing has already been done for you, and it's just the confidence. Have the confidence in yourself that you can do this for your pet. And when you don't have huge vet bills and long, prolonged illnesses, the cost far outweighs what you can pay for a vet with a cat that's ill from the commercial foods. for the commercial foods. Your cat with the skin condition, you're actually helping that vet pay his mortgage every month because you're having to come back for more steroid shots. Change the food. Go raw. Have the confidence. The resources are there. I didn't have those.
Right.
And now it's like, I mean, if I could, I would have Troy make all their food, but I can't afford that. I still have to do some on my own. But I am going to have Troy at Fetching Foods do Coda's food because he has that little bit more that I don't. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And so I feel like I feel like so blessed that, you know, I wouldn't have known how to feed her. I really wouldn't have because of the type of diet that she needs, which is, you know, we have to support a whole stomach and digestive system for years. And it's having the confidence, and it can be done, and the resources are there. And what I have found is that every person that I have reached out to, like to ask a question about raw food and, you know, what about this? I have only been met with respect. I have never had anybody judge me. But that's a reliable source. You know, somebody who's out there who's doing it. And I tend to look for people who I can kind of guess when I look through their website whether or not they're reputable just because of what I know. Mm-hmm. But I would definitely, if you wanted to feed your animals, I would start with Dr. Karen's book. Oh, yeah. Dr. Karen Becker's book. I want that book.
Dr. Karen Becker, Dr. Royal, those two are just, they're gold. Dr. Koger is also just absolutely right in the same conversation. I mean, it's just, there is just so many great people out there. There are great ones out there.
There are, and it's just that you can do it because the thing is that we've been told we don't know what we're doing for so long that we have forgotten how to have the confidence to say, you know what, screw you, I can do this.
Right. Well,
that's what it is.
Let that be the message of the day. You know, everybody needs to go out there and get educated, and hopefully we can put a stop to all this dry kibble BS that's out there. Well, thank you.
Or at the very least, we can force the commercial companies to do better.
I'd like to see them do better. That would be great. Well, thank you, Vicki, for being on the podcast. I really, really appreciated having you on, and come back anytime. I know we have many more stories we can definitely hear from you, and I
oh my gosh. I had fun too. I'm very thankful that we had this conversation, and you know, it's funny is that I actually have a voice that was silenced for so many years.
Well, it doesn't have to be silenced anymore.
I know. I know that other people do it.
Well, I'm Chris Green. Have a fantastic week. Bye-bye, everybody.
Okay, gotta go in my bedtime.